Hi, hello, howdy. I see that you're here for armor content. Let's get right to it, as today we are joined once again by Wade Allen, collector, student, and maker of Western European armor for over 30 years. This is a show and tell demonstration he gave at the Forging 2025, which is an event that happens sort of annually, where armorers from all over the USA get together to share what they know and generally nerd out. Wade brought a selection of real extant pieces from his personal collection to study with us. In this excerpt, which is now part 3 of what will be at least 4, potentially 5, Wade focuses on primarily arm defenses. If you didn't see part 1 about breastplates and backplates, nor part 2 about gauntlets, perhaps go back and watch those as well. But otherwise, let's take a look at armor from the wrist up to the shoulder.
Okay, an arm. Well, kind of an arm. The remnants of an arm after restoration. This was sold to me as a late 14th century arm by a reputable auction house. 14th century armor is impossible to get, and I'm sure that's why they wanted to claim it was late 14th century. It was also owned by Claude Blair, which to me means something, and I have found signs of where the restoration was done, and it's kind of fun for me too. They were a little casual about that in the description too. It's not a whole arm because it has a lot of restoration. It's not late 14th century. It was owned by Claude Blair, so they got one of them right. It's more 1430, so it's still early. It's early 15th century. It has a couple of atypical features originally, and it has some really atypical features now that have happened to it over time. So what we have, vambrace, closed vambrace, 2 hinges holding it together, and it had a strap and buckle holding it closed when you wear it. 2 lames down below the cop, one of which is a rotator that allows the piece to rotate side to side, and the other provides the motion. Cop, reasonably deep. The point may have been pushed in a little bit, so it might have been a little bit more elegant point when it was new. Single lame up top, single tall upper vambrace cannon, which is open to the inside, but it wraps farther around on the side that matters, the outside where you're going to get hit. I've taken a gauge to it, and this is a particularly interesting piece because they seem to have still cared about thickness distribution even in an arm. So this vambrace plate is thicker here than it is here. You'd have a gauntlet cuff overlapping this. The elbow is thicker here than it is here because you're not going to get hit here, basically. And also, it's very common for the wing to crack off because this is a terrible stress point. And if you give yourself a lot more material here, you can minimize that. This plate is thicker up front than it is in the back. And we know it was a relatively high-end piece because, there we go. Let's see if we can see. Can you see that, Ellie? Right here, that mark. There's a split cross maker's mark on there. So this was a Milanese piece good enough to be stamped with a split cross mark. I can't tell whose initials are in it. It's heavily worn. So we have a good piece, bends about how much an arm, in fact, that's more than many of them bend. It bends like an arm needs to bend. Lets it straighten, moves. They don't worry about rotation because the shoulder is separate. He may not even have worn a shoulder. He may have had mail on his shoulder. And he may have had mail because this is a pretty big roll, tall roll there, which would keep things from sliding up. Now, how much is okay on this piece? This plate, the cop, this plate, and this one are old. This whole hinge is old, and half of this hinge is old. The rest is restoration. The wing is stupid looking. One of my pet peeves, you can have your pet, I have my pet peeves. When an articulation straightens out, you cannot see the ends of these lames. You can now, but you can't. It's awful. It's a terrible aesthetic. You need to have the ends of those lames covered up because decency, yes. It is thoroughly indecent to see those. This is not the shape of the original wing. This is probably, it's almost certainly a Calcus piece. And a lot of the Calcus pieces were heavily rotted. And somebody, maybe a guy whose name will come up soon, fixed the wing in the easiest way, which is cutting off all the nasty rabbit bits that had rotted away. I wish they hadn't. I really would like raw edges with rust instead of it being gone. But, so this should be bigger. We know that that has to be bigger because they wouldn't have done this. So we can read what has happened to the piece there. You can get some pretty decent sized wings in the early 15th century. So it could have been, it could have been out here pretty easily. So that's been trimmed down. This plate, half of this hinge, and this stop rib are modern. And we can tell because, well, it's shiny metal. Nobody has attempted to fake this. And when I was looking at it, I went down inside. Woo, up, I got it. Right at the reflection, right there. Yep. What I see there is HRR. There was this guy running around the Tower of London and who wrote books on Roman armor, H. Russell Robinson. He did a lot of restoration for them. And the way they did 1950s-ish restoration at the tower was by building new plates. But they did them out of mild steel, and they didn't try to fake anything. So you see in the tower books, you see a Pauldron, and it's got 2 shiny plates on it. He built them. So I think this was restored at the Royal Armories by H. Russell Robinson for Claude Blair. And another thing we see is, again, the not faking part. That's just Tinner's rivets in there. Standard, modern Tinner's rivets. So somebody took it all the way apart, built the new parts that they needed to do, and reassembled it with Tinner's rivets in very much the dinosaur way of doing things. It all looks good, it'll show you what it's supposed to look like, but you can't mistake the plaster bones for the real bones. They're a different color. Well, they're a different color. I think it's still cool to have this much of a 1430 piece, but that shows you how much is real and how much isn't real. I think he messed this up. That comes really high up in. You can do this and the big flare is fine. It's a little stop rib in here, but it needs to have a little arc in there so that you don't. So that it doesn't offend. I was thinking of the word cut, but offend, cut, same idea. But anyway, the atypical thing, and I haven't had anybody explain this to me, is originally there was a line of really small rivets running around the edge, and I don't see any sign of a roll at the wrist. And they're too closely spaced for a brass border. And Mac is over there going, yes, exactly. Yeah, if anybody comes up with the explanation, I'm happy to add it to my website. Okay, this arm's got a lot more parts, moving parts, bits and pieces and details that work with each other. It's the same principle. It's exactly the same principle. You got a couple of limbs that move. You got a deep cop that lets your elbow fit inside and also lets it move appropriately. It has a single hinge holding it together, not a double hinge. It has a pin that holds it closed instead of a strap and buckle. And yes, I'm willing to let you open it up if you want to. Usually you don't need to slide it on. Most of our hands are small enough to get through there. This has got to be 17th century, though these upper lames are pretty atypical by then. The design details we're seeing here are typical of late 16th into early 17th century. So what we get is engraved lines. No, we don't think they took a graver on it, and there's a whole long thread on the Armor Archive about how we don't have a clue what they really did, but we have many theories. So there are engraved lines all over the place on this thing. Triple here, pair here, triple here, triple running down there. They loved putting engraved lines into things just everywhere in the 17th century. This one's also thick. It's heavy. It's got weight. This was on a shot-proof, pretty complete armor when it was new. What else can we get? We get a rotating collar. So you can strap this up using a leather on the top. You can strap it up and let your arm rotate. And this one moves nicely. It'll spin really beautifully. Whee! We can tell that it currently has sliding rivets in the back. I don't know why you really need it, but they did it, so whatever. And it would have had 2 leathers, center and front, to secure this in place. So it would give you a little motion in the back and a little compression in the front to help absorb the necessary motion between the pauldron and the elbow. Not much of a stepped edge. No, in fact, they didn't step it. Okay. Overlap, riveted solid. This one has a separate wing. Usually on the good ones, you have a integral wing where the cop extends all the way around and then is riveted on an overlap in the back. Unless it's Greenwich. There are some Augsburg ones too, but yes, there's a lot of Augsburg Greenwich crossover. But yes, you are in fact right. However, there's only one pinhole in the back and two in the front, and you don't quite have enough to, and there are no slots, and there are no, yes, I would love to have it be a removable wing with a wing under there. That would be a lie, so I'm not claiming that. Yes?
The left fan brace that you said reconstructed. There's a second hole under the buckle. No idea what that was for.
Who knows? Sometimes they move buckles, sometimes they do things. I don't remember if the greaves that I have here, but I know that greaves I have at home have holes in places where you don't necessarily need them now, and they seem to have been used in construction. So maybe, and I haven't looked at it, there would have been a hole on the inner vent brace plate so you can line the things up and keep them clean. Well, the inner vent brace plate is fake, so we don't know. Maybe the buckle just got moved back for some reason. Well, that one, that's at a time period when you had a buckle. There's no compression. Early 15th century, late 14th century, you're not doing spring pins and things like that, not van brace. Okay, so I think that's about what we're going to get out of this piece. Oh, we have the first case, I think, of the pieces that I passed around where we have brass-capped rivets. Though these may or may not be original. May or may not. I'm not going to leap to, they could be. Since we're up in the arm, and we've just been talking about, was that a piece of my armor? Okay, then we're all good. So, moving on along. This was one of the first pieces I ever got, back in the 70s, maybe 1980. It's a Pauldron, nothing special. When I got it, it had a lot of special about it because somebody had decided that they needed it to hang on a dummy well, and the leathers had fallen apart. And so these little holes you see, somebody had jammed nails through and solidified the piece into a position. And it hung much better on the dummy that way, but it didn't move for beams. And the upper plate was cracked in half and various other nasty, horrible things that have happened to it. So this is one of the few pieces that I have actually taken apart and done some restoration to. But what it means is it lets you get an idea of how it actually moves. And it will let you move forward because of the compression of the leathers and the plates and how the sliding rivets work. Also, because it's a Pauldron and you want to be able to move, if you look at it from the side, the top is much taller than the front, or the back is taller than the front, right? The upper line is not a straight line. The upper line is an angled line, so that when you do this, you don't end up, and it doesn't jam into the roll on the breastplate and all the other horrible things that happen. You can build a Pauldron that's nice and symmetric, and it just won't work. Also, I got a hold of some purported buff leather, and it operates like buff leather, so you can actually get a feel for how totally flexible that thing is. And this thing's been abused enough that I don't really care if you do this kind of thing to it. So feel free to put it on, mess around with it, and mangle it to see how the piece needs to move to let you actually do what you need to do in armor.
Wait, can you comment on buff leather and why it's not what you're going to buy at Timmy's?
The pieces that I have played with that I like, which is a tiny subset of the pieces that are sold as buff leather. What it is it's thick, but it's also extremely supple. And in some of the pieces that I've played with, it's a little springy. So it's a little bouncy in there. You get just a little bit of boop, boop, boop out of it. So you can end up with a very thick, one would hope, strong strap that will go and bend all over the place and let it collapse and play the game. Mac is using a chrome tan and then breaking it. So you run it over the edge of your hatchet stake or whatever, back and forth and back and forth. I end up bending it between my fingers and going back and forth. That gets tedious. But you're trying to break it so that it gives you the flexibility that you're not getting out of most of the modern leathers that we play with. Jeff, what are you using on interior straps?
It depends on the situation.
Fair enough.
Sometimes I'm using oil tanned Kodiak leather or something like that. But it's kind of thin, so I'll use that for leathers that go along edges.
Yeah.
Or maybe like shoulders where I need maybe a thinner type of leather for articulation straps, right? Where it's like what's going on in here.
Right.
But I kind of don't like that because it's maybe a little bit too thin. I'm very picky about the leather. And then like with fall leathers, then I want to use a thicker, I think it's a Boston shoulder that I'm using. And it's, I'm not sure what, it's thick and it has those qualities that you're talking about. It's a little bit stretchy, but it will, if you work it, and I do work my straps back and forth in order to make sure that they are like secure. And if there are parts of the hide that are too stretchy, I'm not going to use them.
Right.
And it's thick, it's supple, it'll collapse, right? And that's what I want for the falls. Because especially like a lot of the people that I might be making falls for are going to be riding. And when you're riding, the falls are going to collapse. And so they need that motion, right? And so I want it to be supple, but I also want it, I think actually on my own armor, which has been kicking around for 15 years now and been through all kinds of things, the straps are starting to wear, maybe a rivet is pulled out, I've had to reset it, or they start to, so it's got to be tough if you want it to last. Picking the right leather for the job. For a long time, I've been using Latigo for the outside straps, but now I'm starting to think that that's not supple enough. I like the idea of a strap that's...
Well, it's nice if it flops nicely. Yes.
Exactly.
The short answer is we don't have anything we really like, and we compromise. We're playing in the shoulder. We had an arm. We moved up to a Pauldron. The other thing that you can do to protect your shoulder, we call a Spaulder. The difference is that it doesn't extend out over the breast and back. And then there are some halfway in between ones that extend only over the back, but I don't have one of those here, so we'll ignore that. Simple upper plate. That's really there so that when you move up, it doesn't stick up. You build the standard SEA 14th century Spaulder. It's got a big cop, and when you stick your arm up, it goes, woo! No, we got a nicer level look. Articulating lames. This one has a central leather now, and now we get to what has happened to it over time. It has a line of rivets here, and it has a line of sliding rivets here. This is the back. This is the front. If we look inside, what we see, I always go the wrong way, on the front, there we go, is a second set of holes. There are two lines of holes here. There are two lines of holes that hold the leather on. We now know that some bozo had a broken leather and they fixed it the easy way by popping the rivets through there, and it hangs nicely on a dummy. You can't use this as a protective piece of armor. You need that compression. It should be there. Now, this is really easy to do, and it happens a lot in pieces that you see, because in assembly, when you're making this thing, you pop a hole all the way through. You can assemble it with wires or nuts and bolts or whatever you feel like. I use nuts and bolts. We got some pictures of wires being used, which are fun. Little twisty wires to keep that in place. So you can fit the pieces together. You can make sure that they work, and then you pop those out. Those are only temporary. And you fill the outer hole, and the Pauldron has some of these. They have rivets running down the front that don't do anything. I mean, they don't do anything except fill a hole. That hole is used in construction and sending them off to the polisher or the heat treater or whatever is going on to keep the plates together. One of those holes, the one on the inner plate, gets used for the leather, and the outer one gets just filled to make it look pretty. And when somebody is doing restoration, they will often just solve that problem and rivet it on together. And it's It's such a shame, but it's better than many things that they do. Okay, what else does this give us? We have a rounded shape that fits to the arm. We have a larger, bigger curve that has to fit to the shoulder. The shoulder merges into the body. You need more volume up at the top so that you can fit it onto the body. A lot of times modern ones are just made big. No, you gotta fit the arm, you've gotta fit the shoulder. So we have that shape that changes line. Maximilian, in quotes, flutes, they're not terribly deep. They're not terribly big. They're accented, again, with lines like the Gothic ones to make them pop. We have parallel decoration here that's kind of fun. This has a really fun roll. It's a very long twist with double lines down inside. And it's thin enough after manufacture that it's cracked through. So, oh well, too bad. I mean, I'm sure some of that is age, but some of it is when they cleaned it up, it got a little thin. Oh well.
So it's what he was saying, the upper part has to fit your shoulder, the lower part has to fit your arm. The transition between the two, that set of what we got, the 4 lanes? That assembly,
1, 2, 3, 4. Yep.
assembly of 4 lanes is comical. And each of those lanes is a slight curve. And this is like critical to making things look nice and work nicely.
Yeah, it's not much, but it is just that taper. Just a little bit of taper to fit it down and taper. I mean, even in a male sleeve, when we get to that, there's taper in that upper arm so that you don't end up with lots of bashing around. This shows the same concept of going from big to small, but in a more aggressive form. This is really taking the idea and running with it. So you go big, you go small.
So the one in your left hand, in addition to going from big to small, you also cover more around the arm.
As it comes down. Yeah. Yes, it's tapering so that it provides more and more protection. I mean, you kind of have to have it open here or it runs into your body, but you can taper it down. The Pauldron does the same thing. It tapers on around to provide extra protection. Sometimes it goes all the way and then ends up wrapping around. Usually it just comes on around and then you let the arm wrap all the way around. So we have that. This also has etching in it. Maximilian and etching don't go together very often, but they do sometimes. And I think that this, due to the style of the decoration, is part of a set of armors that are spread around the world now called the FICO armors. There's a good example in the Philadelphia Museum of Art. I'd really like to get this together with some of the other pieces and see if we can learn something. Yes?
The question about the slots on the back.
Mm-hmm.
I thinking through how those work, I had always assumed that in a neutral position, with your arm kind of hanging down,
Mac?
that you are kind of in the compressed position, and then when you move your arm forward, it would extend. But looking through a bunch of images of stuff inside, that doesn't seem to be the case. Is that particular piece, how is it? Or?
To be honest, I had exactly the same impression for a long time. Now we'll ask somebody who actually works on the ergonomics of things. How do you do it? Or how do you think they did it?
What you guys are thinking, and I've thought in the past too, it's overthinking it.
Yeah, exactly.
You want, when you're making a sliding rivet, in almost all cases, you want the extended position to be the position that the plates are in while you're manufacturing it. That's the position the decoration lines up. That's the position where all the lines are smooth and clean and plain.
That's where you punch a hole when you build it before you make a slot.
That's your initial hole, and you make that slot in the other direction, away from the edge. Okay. So you've got your underlap established. Now you're going to cut that slot, and it's going to increase the underlap when it's needed. So you have the neutral position where all the decoration lines up and everything looks pretty. It's the first hole you punch, and then you cut the slot to increase the overlap. Always.
And that's
To compress the piece. Almost always. And I had assumed the same thing you assumed, and then I started playing with things, and it took me a very long time to get there. What I found in the last set of Spaulders I did, One of the ergonomically weird movements is coming this way. And the front and the top, or the center, will compress because of the leathers. And if you have the backs extend instead of compress, you do this and the shoulders just ride up off your shoulders because there's too much length in there. It needs, and I finally got this, it needs to compress just like the front is to allow this to happen without you sticking the thing way up. And I'm sure there are other things that happen too, but yeah, exactly. So folds are coming up if they have slots. Sometimes they're coming up and back so that the gap isn't so big. Sometimes they're coming up and back really fast. Sometimes they're coming up and back a little slower. Something about quality too, but for nice fit. Tassets, you're allowing yourself to do this. The slots are compressing, so you're getting more overlap, but you're allowing the legs to stretch out. And now the shoulders are doing the same thing.
One thing I assumed when I started making slide holes was that they should be covered by the other plate. And never seen it, but we see plenty of
They should be covered by the other plate and never seen, except all of the times, which is many of them, where no is the answer. And the most peculiar ones are those early 15th century German things where they put the slots on the outer plate. I mean, they gave up on that, but that's just really weird. But yes, often when you're in the sort of most compressed in or stretched out state, the slots come on past the edge of the plates, and they didn't care. I brought this along partially just because it's fun, and partially because it shows how far you can go in the degenerate form, building a Spaulder. So this is a Spaulder plate. Yes, it would have had some more plates on the bottom and then an upper arm cannon, but it still fits to the shoulder, provides that extra shaping, and you can look at this piece and know that it is a left. The rivet is down low, would have carried a slot on the inner plate. The rivet is up here and up higher here to carry the leather. The leathers go in the front, except the exceptions where there are leathers everywhere, but we'll take that to a side. That's a tiny set. So even on this piece, this is almost certainly off of a splint, an early 16th century, cheap, low-end, nasty, awful armor that was produced by at least the hundreds and bought by Henry VIII and Maximilian by the thousands. On this cheap piece of armor, the surface is pretty fair and clean. They bothered to do a little recessed border. They bothered to engrave a line down the recessed border to accentuate it. They fit it to the shoulder as much as they needed to in this size. So this is low end. It still works. It still fits. It still has the aesthetic you need for it to work. Okay. How nasty can you make an elbow and have it work? How little can you do on a piece of metal and call it an elbow? You can do that little. And it will be an elbow and it will function on one of these splint things. You can do a lot better job. You can do a nearly infinitely better job, but you can't do a worse job and have it work. This is the base case for an elbow. And I think it's fun to see sort of where low end went. Even low end, it isn't lumpy, it isn't rough, it's a decently finished piece of armor with very little shape.
It works for anybody.
But it works for anybody who's not really big. You need a size large to go with it too. But a small and a large, and it'll work for anybody. Yeah. But that's how bad you can get and have it work. You do need some flair here. It needs to fit to the elbow. You need it to allow you to straighten out. You need it to allow you to bend. You can't just make a triangular shape and curve it up and slap it on your elbow. It just won't work. But this will barely work. You can move up significantly and give it a good deal more shape. I should turn it around. It's that one. It's a right. You're getting a larger set of the wing here, and a smaller piece of the wing here, so that it'll fit down to the vambrace and to the upper cannon and do that. In general, if there's an asymmetry, you need the top to be bigger, the bottom to be a little narrower. We cover a lot more. We have a better shape in the elbow. We have a nicer cut in the center. We've added some decorative lines. When you're building armor, you know that you must have perfect hammer control. Your stakes must be perfect. You do perfect alignment and you get a clean flute. Well, unless you're a bozo and you can't find your stake to save your soul, and you're sitting at the wrong angle on the stake, and you say good enough. Every little hash mark is off by 30 degrees from where it should be in this elbow. He just sat at the table wrong and ran the thing. It's thick. And so they solved the problem with a grinder. They just made it work. See how that fits to my arm when it bends? And again, this is low end. This is not a high end piece. You're not flailing it out. It should ride smoothly. Some of the pieces ride smoothly enough that you get little rub marks right there where the wing is touching it. I will get to this one at some point. We have a similar shape. It's not as big here, but the overall part that fits your body is the same. But we've moved up the notch and added flutes and little engraved lines and even cusped edges, which are really decorative. They're beautiful. They're nice little pieces. It still doesn't have a lot of shape to fit to your elbow, but it has just enough to hold that piece in place. When I bought this, what I bought was a pair of arms. Well, what I was sold was a pair of arms. What I bought was an elbow and two pretty abused Spaulders. The ones that are missing a plate in them. They're too short up here. Anyway, we talked about them at one point. And then the vambraces were really awful, 20th century yuck. But they had made a mate to go with this, and they just hadn't quite cleaned it up enough. And so it was a little rough. But I bought a pair of arms. I really purchased an elbow and some miscellaneous pieces. It happens. You got to know what you're looking for and decide what it's worth to you. Okay. Somebody wanted some etching bits, and people like this elbow for some reason. It's big. This is the opposite of the design here. Instead of going for as little movement as you can, we'll make it as big as we can and make it big and deep and full and round and flared and roped and everything else. So the cop itself has shape. It has that depth and the wing and everything. And once they're done with that, then they've added decoration. So we have leafy decoration. There's the one in Kerberg, the one in Graz. There are not many of these. Lauder has one in his collection now with this big leafy decoration. I don't know that I've seen another one with etching in the leaves. So this has etching in the leaves, and it has etching in the border work. When I bought it, it had been cleaned all white, which was just awful. It could not be put up with. So I painted the background black. Nothing special, just ordinary paint. It won't hurt anything. It had a strap around the elbow. We see a rivet there. It had a strap around the elbow to hold it to you. And it had a peg and pin system to hold it to a vertical strap to connect the upper and lower arm. So even though we're missing the rest of the arm, we can start to see how it went together with the rest of the pieces. And again, it fits to the arm. This was for a bigger guy. He had a little bit of meat to him. Yes, definitely. And then, again, to continue both the elbows and the etching theme, this is pretty nice. There are a bunch of elbows like this that show up in Vienna and Madrid on pretty good armors from the middle of the 16th century, this specific shape, this rounded but slightly pointed, creased in, interesting roll. It's a really simple shape, but again, it works. It has enough shape to fit to your body. It would have been laced to a vertical leather strap. In fact, somebody has put some buff. This is good buff. I don't know where they got it, but there's good buff in there. They put some pieces of buff in this thing for no apparent reasons. If they never put holes on the ends. Yeah, I don't know. They were thinking about it, and they riveted this one in too. So, but it gives you an idea of how it should connect to the arm. It would have been laced, and so it has grommets. It has fun shape, and looking at the etching is good to give you an idea of the style of etching, the type of thing that they were going for. And it's good to just sort of get a feel for their aesthetic in an etched piece. So this is a series of dolphin kind of things that are intertwined with each other with dot backgrounds. Okay, that's the end of our normal arm stuff.
As always, thanks so much for watching. Part 4 will be up next week, where Wade will teach us about greaves. I'll be continuing to post more of these recordings from the forging until we run out of material, which will be several months hence. But never fear, if you enjoy my video essays about fashion, design, and history, there will be more of that to come. Perhaps consider liking, subscribing, and supporting my work on Ko-fi if you enjoy all that I do. And until next time, stay shiny.